إنا أعطيناك الكوثر صدق الله العظيم وصدق رسوله النبي الكريم. My dear brothers, by the grace of Allah Ta'ala, we've completed our 30 days of fasting in the month of Ramadan. And now we've come out for the Eid prayer. Some of us think that the Eid prayer is optional, but the Eid prayer is a very vital part of the month of Ramadan. It's very important. From a fiqh point of view, from a legal point of view, anyone who doesn't pray Salatul Eid will be sinful. So you will get sin. But from a taqwa point, and you must pray Salatul Eid in Jamaat. You can't pray it on your own. It has to be prayed in Jamaat. So you must come out and pray this day. But from a taqwa point of view, from a reward point of view, it's also very important. Because this is the day that you get rewarded. So all the month of Ramadan that you completed, this is the day that Allah Ta'ala will reward you. The day of Eid and the night of Eid is known as the night and day of reward. The Prophet ﷺ said that Allah Ta'ala gives and forgives the whole ummah on the last night of Ramadan, at the end of Ramadan. So people first thought this might be Laylatul Qadr, because that's a virtuous night. But the Prophet ﷺ said that a worker only gets paid when he completes his work. Meaning that he will get paid, he will get rewarded once the month is over. And this is the day that you get rewarded. Allah Ta'ala says, and the Prophet ﷺ said that on this night, on this day, Allah Ta'ala sends the angels and they line the paths and they call out to you and say to the people, we can't hear this, but all the other makhluk, all the other creation can hear this except the humans, and call out saying, Allah Ta'ala is inviting you to come and get your reward for what you've done in these last 30 days. And come and receive your reward. And that's why we come out on this day, to receive our reward from Allah Ta'ala. And we show happiness on this day, which is why you should wear good clothes on this day, which is why you should wear perfume on this day, which is why you should have a shower on this day, have a bath on this day, make special arrangements to come out and show Allah Ta'ala that you are grateful, but also that you want the reward from Allah Ta'ala and receive that reward from Allah Ta'ala. This is a day of reflection as well. The Khulafa of Islam, Sayyidina Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu, used to send a message out to the whole of the Islamic world, telling them they congratulated the people who did well in this month and were forgiven by Allah Ta'ala. But he also did afsoos, commiseration with those that weren't forgiven, that didn't take full opportunity of this month. So it's a day of happiness, and the people who should be happy on this day are those who worked hard in this month and fasted in this month, did ibadat in this month and became close to Allah Ta'ala. And those who missed out on this month should be sorrowful, should be upset, because this time will never come again. We'll have another Ramadan, but that's one less Ramadan that we will have. And the Prophet ﷺ said that anybody who misses a day of fasting in Ramadan on purpose, without an excuse, he will never make that day up in terms of virtue, even if he fasted for the rest of his life. So fasting in the month of Ramadan had that special virtue. Similarly, we know about the ibadat. The Prophet ﷺ said that any worship you did in this month that was farz is equal to 70 fard. Now, any nafal and any nafal that you did was equal to fard. As in, every reward that you did was elevated, had greater status, and had greater reward. So this was a month where you were supposed to have gathered the reward from Allah Ta'ala, and gathered as much as you can, and then be thankful to Allah Ta'ala for it. The other thing to remember is that just because you do something good doesn't mean you will be rewarded for it. Because it's not a trade or a business that we do with Allah Ta'ala, saying that we will do this and Allah Ta'ala will give us this. Any reward we get from Allah Ta'ala is based on His fazl and His mercy and His kindness. That's why two people doing the same act can get rewarded and will get rewarded differently, depending on their own status. So an alim ad-din who knows a lot does a small act, may not be as rewardful because he should be doing more because he knows more. Whereas somebody who doesn't know a lot and isn't very pious, but then does an act of kindness, will get rewarded more, because he's doing that out of jazba and he's doing it according to his knowledge and skills. Similarly, a rich person who gives £10 will not get as much reward as a poor person giving £10, for whom it was difficult. So depending on your status and depending on your condition, you will get different types of reward, and depending on your status. And reward will come if Allah accepts that deed. So there will be many people on the day of judgment who will come, and he says in hadith, the person will be covered in blood because he was martyred and murdered on the battlefield fighting for Islam. And Allah Ta'ala will say, there is nothing for you today, because you fought, because you wanted the appreciation and the glamour from the people, and you got that. You didn't do it for me. Similarly, a rich person will come who would have given lots of sadaqah. Allah Ta'ala will say, there's nothing for you here today, because you gave sadaqah to show off, to get the praise of the people, and you got that. So what you wanted, you got. You didn't do it for the akhirat, so you have nothing on the day of akhirat. So many deeds won't get accepted. Therefore, it's important that once you do a deed, you then work hard to make sure it's accepted. And the Sufya said that don't put as much effort into the deed itself, put more effort into making sure it's accepted. So when you do a deed, make sure you're thinking about, will this get accepted as well or not? And the way that gets accepted is to have your niyat and your intention clean. Make sure you're doing it for Allah Ta'ala, and so work hard for that. So every time you do a deed, you make sure you do that. And similarly, be there asking Allah Ta'ala. Ask Allah Ta'ala. The problem some of us have is we don't ask Allah Ta'ala. We ask people for things, but then sometimes we feel a bit ashamed, or we just keep quiet when we should be asking Allah Ta'ala. There is no shame in asking Allah Ta'ala. There's shame in asking from people, but there should never be any shame from asking from Allah Ta'ala. Allah Ta'ala's relationship to you is very close, and the love that Allah Ta'ala has for His servant is very high and very deep, and we should never be ashamed of asking from Allah Ta'ala. So we've completed our 30 days of fast, and this is a day when we should ask Allah Ta'ala for our reward. It's said in the books of Seerah, it says in the books of the Tasawwuf, that the Sahaba Ikram would spend 6 months after Ramadan supplicating and making dua to Allah Ta'ala to accept my fast Ramadan. We at the end of Ramadan ask Allah Ta'ala to accept them and then forget about it and then move on. But they would spend 6 months asking Allah Ta'ala for the acceptance of their Ramadan and accepting of their effort. And we've gone through a lot of hardship in this month. So why shouldn't we ask Allah Ta'ala to accept this from us? And then after 6 months are over, they then start doing dua for the next Ramadan and say, Allah Ta'ala, keep me alive until the next Ramadan. Let me see the next Ramadan. Some of us start doing it when there's 1 month left or 2 months left. But as soon as 6 months are over, you then start thinking, when you're closer to the next Ramadan than you are from the Ramadan has passed, you start thinking about the next Ramadan and start improving yourself. And one of the ways you improve yourself for next Ramadan is when you're reading Nafal Namaz, if you only knew a few surahs, try to memorize more surahs this year. So that next Ramadan you can actually do more ibadat, and you can have a longer qiyam, and you can do more and more. And if you're struggling to read the Quran, then read more Quran if you can. So you get more closer to Allah Ta'ala. And if you can, save more money so you can give more sadaqah in that month as well. So you get closer to Allah Ta'ala and build yourself up and get more pious and sincere. So spend that time getting closer to Allah Ta'ala. But as soon as this month is over, we have Eid Fitr. And as you can tell from the name, there's something called Fitr, Sadaqatul Fitr or Zakatul Fitr, or as we call it in our language, Fitrana. And this is an important part of the month of Ramadan in acceptance. The Prophet ﷺ said that your fasts are remaining suspended between the heavens and the earth, meaning they don't go up to the heavens to be accepted until you pay your Sadaqatul Fitr, until you pay your Zakatul Fitr. And you must pay the Zakatul Fitr before the Eid prayer. So there's no point going through the whole 30 days of Ramadan and the hardship and then your fast unaccepted. So you must pay that Sadaqatul Fitr before the Eid prayer. And it's wajib upon you. Meaning that if you didn't pay it to this year or previous years, you will still have to pay it. And if you don't pay it, you will be sinful. So just as if you miss a prayer or you have to make it up in your life, you will still need to make this up. But you should try and pay it before, because the reward of paying it before Eid prayer is a lot higher than it is after the Eid prayer. So the Prophet ﷺ said, anyone who pays Sadaqatul Fitr before Eid prayer, that's Sadaqatul Fitr. Anyone who paid it afterwards, that's just a normal Sadaqah, so the reward will be reduced from that. So you pay that. And the Prophet ﷺ also said in the famous hadith that the Sadaqatul Fitr, it tohra siyami min al-lagwi wa rafath, that it purifies your fasting from any indecent talk that you did or anything wrong that you may have done. So during the day of fasting, it's a long day. You may have sworn, you may have become angry, you may have done something wrong. So that weakens and reduces the worth of that fast. But by paying Sadaqatul Fitr, the Prophet ﷺ said that repairs and mends that fast, so that when it does go up to Allah Ta'ala, it goes in a perfect condition and it's patched up so that you will get better reward for that. So that's one of the benefits of paying Sadaqatul Fitr. And the second benefit is Tawmatan lil Masakin, that it provides food for the poor, for the miskeen. So there's two benefits of Sadaqah. And similarly, there's always two benefits in everything that we do. Sometimes we think that when we do an ibadat, there's no benefit in it for us. But in this hadith, what did the Prophet ﷺ say first? He said, if the Sadaqatul Fitr helps your fast, purifies your fast. And then secondly, it supports the poor. Our mentality is that if we give sadaqah, we're helping the poor first, and then we come second. But actually, every act of ibadah that you do actually helps you first. It's for your own betterment. The fact that it helps the poor is a secondary issue. Similarly, when you pay normal zakat, you are the main beneficiary of that zakat, not the poor people. They're secondary. Because any mal that you have will have something wrong with it. And one of the meanings of zakat is purification. As you say, zaki, it purifies it. So when you pay your mal over, it purifies it. Because even though how hard you try in life, something dodgy will come into your wealth. You may have told a white lie, or you may have said something wrong that wasn't exactly the truth. So some of your wealth will be contaminated. Any people who have money in the bank, you try and cut out the interest, but you don't know, you may have missed a statement out, some dirt may have actually entered into your wealth. Something dodgy may have happened. So no matter how hard you try, something wrong will happen in your wealth. And this zakat, he takes out of proportion and takes the filth out of that wealth and purifies the rest of your wealth. Just as if you've got a body and one toe of it's defective, they cut that toe off so that the rest of the body remains pure. And there's a famous hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said, Al-Hazrat, Rahmatullah alayhi, actually wrote a whole risala on zakat and why you should pay zakat. And the first hadith they quoted was that the Prophet ﷺ said, nobody's wealth is destroyed, as in nobody's ship sinks or his wealth is stolen, except that he didn't pay zakat on it. So nobody's wealth is destroyed except that he did not pay zakat on it. And I've seen that with many other people, that they delayed paying the zakat and their wealth was then ruined by somehow the stock market crashed or the business failed or they had a burglary or someone stole it or they had an accident or whatever and their wealth was destroyed. So nobody's wealth is destroyed. And because that filth or that dirt in your wealth, that contaminates the rest of it and can spread. Just like cancer spreads through the body, that can spread it and that does it wrong. Therefore, as soon as your year is up and you're liable to pay zakat, you should pay it straight away. And if for some reason you can't pay it straight away, for example, you can't get to the poor people or you're going abroad and you'll take it with you at that time, then the least you should do is take that money and separate it from your wealth. Don't keep it in your bank account with the rest of your money. If you worked out that I owe £1,000 zakat this year, take that out. So physically separate it from your money as well. So if it's £1,000 or £500, put it, don't say, I know in my head it's £1,000 in my bank account with the rest of my money. Don't do that because you're still touching it. Take it out and put it separate somewhere. So put it in a different bank account if you can, or take the cash out and put it somewhere else. But keep it separate from the rest of your wealth, and then you'll get barakat in that wealth. But so when we give sadaqah, when we do things, it helps us. It's for our own betterment. So when you give sadaqatul fitr, it helps you. Similarly, the ulama said that when you give sadaqah, it increases your wealth. So you benefit. Every time you give sadaqah, it increases your wealth. The Prophet ﷺ took a qasam, took an oath. And the Prophet ﷺ doesn't take an oath on any occasion or just like that, but he took an oath on this occasion. And the Prophet ﷺ was talking to the Sahaba Ikram. Do you think the Sahaba Ikram ever doubted the truth that the Prophet ﷺ was saying? We take a qasam or we take an oath on something because we know that the person listening to us may doubt us because, we talk a lot of rubbish half the time. So we want to make sure that the person understands that this is the truth. But the Prophet ﷺ always spoke the truth. The Prophet ﷺ, everything the Prophet ﷺ said was a wahi. And the Sahaba Ikram knew this. But even despite this, he still took a qasam. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam took a qasam on this fact and said that sadaqah does not decrease your wealth, but actually increases your wealth. So by giving sadaqah, you will increase your wealth because of barakat that will come into it. You don't know what barakat is, and that's a long story about what barakat is. Sometimes it stops a calamity coming. So you may not actually see an increase in your wealth physically, but you don't know that around the corner something bad was about to happen to you. But because of that sadaqah that you gave, it stopped that bad thing happening to you. And you have that iman in your heart, you know that will happen. And also just a link with sadaqah and Ramadan, because you think we've just finished 30 days of Ramadan, and then now we're giving sadaqah as well. So what's the link between sadaqah and fasting? Well, there's a very deep link with it. In the month of fasting, you showed complete tawakkul, you showed complete reliance, complete security upon Allah Ta'ala, that you will get through this day of fasting. These are very long days. These are 16, 17 hours, from 3 o'clock in the morning to 9:30. But all through this month, we went through it. And how many people spoke to non-Muslims And they said they couldn't believe that you can go through the whole day without food or water. They said it was impossible for you to do that. They said you can't do that. Surely you must fall ill. Surely you must fall over. Surely you can't go through the whole day even without water. And some of the days we had were very hot as well in this year. We had some of the hottest days of July for years. But we went through the whole day and we got through it. And none of us fell over. None of us actually fell ill. I don't know anybody who fell ill in this month. Everybody went through this day and we had complete tawakkul in it. So it's something that seemed impossible. And it does look impossible on paper if you think about it. 16, 17 hours without food, without water in this heat. And also, we did it without any pressure. As in, we kept working. These weren't school holidays, these weren't holidays from work. Everybody did their duties. And we did our duties properly. Maybe slightly reduced, but most people still had to wake up at 7 o'clock in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning and go to work and then come back and still worked and still prayed in the evening. And we did all that despite our mind telling us, people around us telling us that it's impossible, you can't do this. Not for 30 days. But we did it. And why did we do it? Because we had complete faith that we could do it. Because Allah Ta'ala told us to do it. And we knew that if Allah Ta'ala told us to do it, we must be able to do it. Because it's our belief that Allah Ta'ala never burdens anybody more than His strength. Allah Ta'ala knew we could do it, knows we can do it. And we had complete faith that we could do it. So we went through the whole day knowing that we could do it. And because we knew that nothing's going to happen to us, we will get through the day and reach the end. And we've done it. And we did 30 days. Similarly, when it comes to sadaqah, the shaitan and our mind tells us that if we give money in the path of Allah Ta'ala, our wealth will reduce. And that's simple mathematics. You know, you have some money, you take some out, it's less. So our mind tells us this. But our tawakkul, our belief, our iman should tell us, just as we went through fasting, that we will get through this, we will get benefits from this. Our iman should tell us that when we give in the path of Allah Ta'ala, our wealth won't decrease, it will actually increase. So just as we had complete tawakkul on Allah Ta'ala, that our wealth won't decrease, that our fast, we will get through the fast without any pain. Similarly, we have the tawakkul in Allah Ta'ala that we will get reward for this and our wealth will actually increase, not decrease. By giving money, we won't become poor, but we'll become stronger. We won't become worse off, we will actually be better off. And we need that tawakkul. During the day of fasting, what we had was Ainul Yaqeen. As in we could see what got through you through the day. If at 10 o'clock in the morning, at 11 o'clock in the morning, when you started to feel thirsty or hungry, you knew that at 9:30 you will have food and water. So you could see that with your own eyes, and you had complete assurity in your heart, complete tawakkul that there's food at home and I will get food. Even if there's no food at home, you will come to the masjid and there will be food here for you. As in you had Ainul Yaqeen, your mind knew that there would be food at the end of the day, and that got you through the day. If for some reason you thought there would never be any food, that's when you would start to panic, thinking where's the food going to come from? But because you had security knowing that the food will be there in the evening, you carried on. That gave you that himmah, that gave you that strength to carry on. Similarly, you need to create the same belief in sadaqah. Believe that by giving this money, you will have more money. So just as you had Ainul Yaqeen, that you need Haqqul Yaqeen here, you need to understand in your heart and your mind that you will get more from Allah Ta'ala. Don't be afraid of giving more and more in Allah Ta'ala's path, because you will get it. Just as in the fast you could see the food, here you need to have the complete belief that Allah Ta'ala will give you. So just as the fasting reinforces your belief, it should reinforce your belief in sadaqah that you will get it. You will get more at the end of the day, and you will increase your wealth, and your wealth will be protected, and there will be reward for you. There will be reward for you in this world, and there will be greater reward for you in the akhirat. And you're supposed to increase that and have that complete surety. That's why the fasting and the sadaqah are linked, because they're both based on tawakkul and based upon your security and assurance on Allah Ta'ala, that Allah Ta'ala will provide for you and will not let your sadaqah go to waste, and will actually increase it. So if you can create that jazbah in your heart, then you will have that. And one of the worst things that stops us from, one of the reasons why we eat during the day is because we fear that if we go hungry, we'll go weak. But the fasting showed we don't go weak. Similarly, sadaqah, what stops us from sadaqah is the shaitan saying that you will go weak, you will get reduced wealth, you will become poor, and that stops us. But the other thing to remember, what is poverty and what is wealth? There's material poverty and there's material wealth, which we know about. If you've got lots of money, then you're seen as material wealth. If you've got less money, then you're seen as. But there's something called spiritual poverty, which we call fakiri or fakr in Islam. And the Prophet ﷺ said, Al-fakru fakri. that my poverty, my spiritual poverty is my fakhr. And the Prophet ﷺ didn't take any fakhr on anything. But he took fakhr, he took pride over his fakiri, over his spiritual poverty. And I'll explain what that is later on. But the Prophet ﷺ never took fakhr on anything. So when you listen to hadith or verses of the Quran, as I mentioned about this hadith on Sadaqah al-Fitr, the ordering, first he mentioned his benefits due, then he benefits the poor. It's important not just to look at the message, but look at the words used and look at the style, because there's great wisdom in the style. And there's great wisdom in the choice of words the Prophet ﷺ used and Allah Ta'ala used in the Quran. The Prophet ﷺ never took fakhr on anything. The Prophet ﷺ in many hadiths said that on the day of Qiyamah, I will be the first one to enter paradise. But I have no fakhr over that. I don't take pride over that. The Prophet ﷺ said that on the day of judgment, I will have the greatest ummah. So on the day of judgment, everybody will gather with their prophets. So we, inshallah, will gather with the Prophet ﷺ. And the Prophet ﷺ will have the most number of people. And the Prophet ﷺ, I don't take fakhr over this. And the Prophet ﷺ said, I will be given the keys of Jannat, and my ummah will go first into paradise. And the Prophet said, I don't take fakhr over this. I have no pride. So he didn't take pride over any of these things, which are great things. But what he took pride over was his fakhr, with his spiritual poverty. So spiritual poverty is a very important thing for us to understand. And so what is spiritual poverty? It's not being poor. Some people think that if you want to become a fakir, that you have to wear ripped clothes, or you have to have hair all over the place, and you have to live with nothing. That's not what spiritual poverty is. That's not what Islam teaches us what poverty is or wealth is. Because poverty and wealth is a state of mind, not a state of your bank balance. It's a state of mind. You could be a millionaire and still be a fakir. And you could actually be an absolute tramp, a down and out, but not be a fakir at all, and actually be worse than the rich people. And there's very great virtues of the poor people. The Prophet ﷺ said that I looked into Jannat and I saw more poor people in there. And he said that I saw that I see people entering paradise, and I see the poor people entering paradise, and I see the rich people being stopped from entering, as in they're being held back. And another hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said that the poor people will enter paradise 50,000 years before the rich people will. And it's not just any poor person. He said it's people who have spiritual poverty, not the ordinary rich people. And the Prophet ﷺ said that the person who has less wealth will have less to account for on the day of judgment. And that's one of the reasons why they will go in early, because they will have less to account for. The rich people will have to account for all their wealth, where they got it from. And we know how we get our wealth. And we know how most people get their wealth. And then where they spent it. And we know how we spend our wealth. And the wrong places that we spend our wealth and how we do bad. So you can see the accountability for the rich people will be longer and harder. Whereas the poor people will have not much to account for, and they will go into paradise. But spiritual poverty, as Sheikh Sadi rahmatullah alayhi said, he said, Tawangari badil ast, naba mal ast. That wealth is a matter of the heart, naba mal ast. Not a question of how much money or wealth you have. It's about your state of heart. And spiritual poverty is being happy with what you have, and only having what you need. And the rest of the wealth, you understand that you give away, and it's not for you. So be happy with what you need, and also only have what you need, and what is sufficient for you. The Prophet ﷺ never did. The Prophet ﷺ said that, in the famous that we never had 2 days' food consecutively. And the Prophet ﷺ said we would go to sleep not knowing where tomorrow's meal would come from. So this is the stage of the Prophet's poverty and spiritual poverty. But the Prophet ﷺ, as we have many hadiths, Allah Ta'ala said, if you want these mountains around Makkah Sharif, we can make them into gold if you want. The Prophet ﷺ refused that because he wanted to take pride over his poverty. Because when you get into wealth, then that starts to decay into your heart. So when you're happy with what you have, and you only need what you need, then you can be satisfied. And then you're not wasting your time trying to go after more and more things. And that's what the fasting taught us. During normal times, during the year, a glass of water, we would think, what's a glass of water? We don't care about a glass of water. We think, I don't want a glass of water, I want Coke or I want juice. We don't reckon what a glass of water is. But think back to the days of fasting. Think back when you woke up in the morning and your mouth was thirsty and your mouth was dry. How priceless was that glass of water then? And think about it, when you open your fast, how sweet did that glass of water taste? How beneficial was that? But on a normal day like today or tomorrow, you won't even look at water. You won't even think water is anything. But during fasting, that glass of water was priceless to you. That glass of water was the most sweetest thing you could think about. So that shows that what you really need is a glass of water. And we think you need to have your 3 meals a day. So when you wake up on a normal day, you have your cereal, you have your toast, you have your juice, you have your eggs, you have your protein shake or whatever, and you have all of these things, and you still think that's not enough, and you think nothing of it. But during your day of fasting, when you woke up at 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock, even a glass of water, you'd have thought, would have been more tasty, would have been more delicious to you, and more sweet than all of these great breakfasts that you have on a normal day. And that would have sufficed, and you'd have thought, if only I could have a glass of water, my day would have been a lot more easier. So it just shows that a lot of these things that we gather around us are actually useless. They don't actually benefit us. We've just increased our luxury. We've just increased our needs and our desires. But actually what we really need is just a bare basics. Most of us went through the whole day with one meal. It was very difficult for us to eat iftari and sehri on the same night because they're very close to each other. If you had a decent iftari, you didn't eat much of sehri. So basically you went through the whole day with one meal. And then when we read in the books of Sufiyah that they went through the whole day with one meal, went through the whole day fasting, then we can see that they could do that. Whereas normally we think we can't actually do that. I must have my 3 meals a day, or else I will get hungry or I will starve. That's because we've trained ourselves and divulged ourselves in that luxury and increased ourselves. And the more we get into this dunya, the more that ruins us. The Prophet ﷺ said that the famous hadith that Allah Ta'ala said that when Allah Ta'ala loves somebody, He takes him out of the dunya. When Allah Ta'ala loves somebody, He takes him out of the dunya. What that means, He doesn't actually kill him or take his life away. He takes him out the desires and the want of the dunya. That he doesn't actually want anything else. And that's why you will see people who are Allah's walis, who are close to Allah Ta'ala, they don't really care about these luxuries anymore because they've come out of that. And another hadith says that when Allah Ta'ala doesn't like somebody, He embroils him in the dunya. He starts going for more and more. And the more luxuries you want, the more you will work hard for it, and more desire, and the more you will get into this world and become drowning in this world. And you will not have more. And then the more you drown in this world, the less time you will have to think about Allah Ta'ala. The more you drown in this world, the more things you will do which break the rules of Allah Ta'ala. And you will get further and further away from Allah Ta'ala. And you won't have time for Allah Ta'ala, because your heart will start feeling that. The other meaning that the ulama and the mashayikh have said about what is spiritual poverty, that is your fear of poverty. So you could be rich, but if you fear poverty, you will then not be rich, because you're fearing that I will get poor and poor. Whereas the true fakir is somebody who actually doesn't fear poverty. He doesn't care that he will get poor, because he has complete tawakkul on Allah Ta'ala, that Allah Ta'ala will provide for him. So he knows that Allah Ta'ala will provide for him. Similarly, that's why when we give sadaqah, we know that Allah Ta'ala will provide for us. That's why we don't get involved in these things. The Sufiya Ikram used to hate wealth and stay away from it, because they thought it will come and destroy their spiritual poverty. That's why whenever the Sufiya Ikram get something, they give it away. They don't keep it for themselves. So whenever they get something, they give it away. So they give everything away that they have from Allah, because when you keep it with you, you start thinking about how do I preserve it. And as I said about zakat and stuff, it starts to temper with your stuff. So stay away from the luxuries, because all they do is weaken your iman and weaken your resolve. There's a famous hadith in Mishkat Sharif that Sayyidina Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu went to a nation, went to a people, and was thirsty and asked for something to drink. So they gave him a glass of water, but in the water they put honey into it. Because if a guest comes to your house, what do? You give them something better. If someone asks for water, you normally give them juice, because you think, just give them plain water, it doesn't look good because it's a guest. So they gave the Sayyidina Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu a glass of water and they put honey in it. And then Sayyidina Umar looked at it and said, I can now hear Allah Ta'ala saying on the day of Qiyamah to the people that you had your luxuries in the world and you benefited from them. You have nothing on this day of Qiyamah because you enjoyed the luxuries in that world. Therefore I fear that Allah Ta'ala will say this to me. So he gave the water back. He didn't drink the water that had honey in it, because he feared that if he drank that water with honey, that would be seen as a luxury that he had. And all he needed was water to quench his thirst. He didn't need the sweetness in that. So he gave that back, and that showed the faqr and the restraint they had from the luxuries. There's another famous hadith that Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala went to a nation as well. I think it's Tirmidhi Sharif, I think it is in. That they gave him roasted goat's meat. Because obviously, as Muslims, we're generous people, so guests came. But Sayyidina Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala sent that back, saying that these luxuries are not for me. The Prophet ﷺ never ate more than just wheat and bread made from wheat. He didn't eat more than this, so I'm not going to partake in this roasted goat. And that's what happens. We just increase our luxuries and we increase those, and then we get sucked into the world. And then when we get sucked into the world, we start doing bad things. And the fear of poverty comes in. The more wealth you get, the more you fear about it. You may have seen that the more richer people become, the more stingy they become, more miserly they become, because they think, I've worked so hard for this money, why should I give it away? And the more you have, the harder it is to give it away. So we're coming to the end of the time. But the Sufiya Ikram once asked, one of the great Sufis was asked, why does the wealth of the rich not benefit the poor? Because you look in society, there's lots of rich people and there's lots of poor people. And you think, as communists said, that if you spread the wealth out, everybody would become the same. So it doesn't make sense that you have people walking down the road who are wealthy, and then you have people sitting on the road, and they walk past them who are sitting on the road poor. So the Sufiya Ikram said that there's one of three reasons why they're not benefiting. One is that there's something filthy or wrong with the wealth of the rich that prevents them giving in the path of Allah Ta'ala. So if there's something wrong with your wealth, that will actually act as an impediment from giving it in the path of Allah Ta'ala. Because Allah Ta'ala only accepts the pure. He doesn't accept dirt or filth. So there could be something wrong with the wealth of the rich, which is the reason why it's not going to the poor. And the second reason could be that Allah Ta'ala has not chosen this rich person for his service. So that's whenever we do something good, we thank Allah Ta'ala. And because we know that any power we have is from Allah Ta'ala. We say, La hawla wa la quwwata. And we said that all our power, all our tawfiq is from Allah Ta'ala. So whenever you give sadaqah, be grateful. Because Allah Ta'ala has given you the ability to do that. Whenever you do something good, thank Allah Ta'ala. You kept 30 days of fast, thank Allah Ta'ala for that. He gave you the ability and the strength and the consciousness to do that. There's many people who are too weak to keep fasts. So they are deprived of this reward. There's many people who don't know the value of the fast and they miss it out. So the fact that you give in Allah Ta'ala's path, you do something, be grateful that Allah Ta'ala has then chosen you for his service. Well, the third reason Sufiya said it could be because Allah Ta'ala still wants to test the poor people more. So Allah Ta'ala tests you with good and tests you by giving you wealth. Allah Ta'ala sometimes tests you by taking your wealth away. Allah Ta'ala wants to see what you do. Allah Ta'ala said, the Prophet ﷺ said that there's one type of person that Allah Ta'ala will write as a sabir and a shakir. Somebody who is patient and somebody who is grateful. And the Sahaba Ikram said, who is that person that Allah Ta'ala will record as a sabir and a shakir? And a sabir is a great thing. Because what does Allah Ta'ala say? Inna Allaha ma'as sabirin. And the Prophet ﷺ said, the sabir and shakir will be that person who looks at people better than him in the deen and follows them. So look at people who are better than you in the deen and follow them. And the second trait of that person is that he looks at people who are worse off than him in the dunya and then thanks Allah Ta'ala for what he has been given. So look at people who are worse off than you. We sometimes think that there's nobody worse than me. That sometimes when something bad happens, you think there's nobody as poor as me. Especially a lot of women. They do this. It's a trait of women saying that, what have I got? What have I been given? I've got nothing. Look at that person, they're a lot better than us, they have a better house and there's a better car than us. The Prophet ﷺ said, the true believer is the one who looks at people who are worse off than him in the dunya and then thanks Allah Ta'ala that Allah Ta'ala has given him more than that person. And the people you should look up to are the people in the deen who are better than you and then try to follow them. Unfortunately, we're the reverse now. We look at people who are better than us in the dunya and we follow them. And then we do all these wrong things. Sometimes you don't know how these people have attained their wealth. And then a lot of the people, when they tell you how they made their wealth, they're not telling you the truth. No rich person or businessman will ever tell you the secrets of his business. He will never tell you where he gets his goods from, or he will never tell you his profit margin. So you can never compete with them, and then we compete with them, and then we fall into problems. So we should always look at people who are worse off than us in the dunya, and thank Allah Ta'ala for what He has given us, and always be grateful for what you have, and never complain. So never complain, especially never complain to the people. Never be ungrateful. There's a verse of the Quran that Allah Ta'ala on the Day of Judgment will ask you about your blessings. Every blessings that you've been given, you'll be asked about on the Day of Judgment. And some of the Sahaba Ikram, the poor people, came to the Prophet ﷺ and said, they didn't have any shoes or anything. And they said, will Allah Ta'ala ask us about our blessings? Meaning saying that, we've got nothing. We're poor, we have nothing, we don't even have shoes on our feet. What will Allah Ta'ala ask us about the blessings He's given us? And the Prophet ﷺ said, do you not drink cold water? And do you not sit under the shade of a tree? That's a blessing from Allah Ta'ala as well. that you've actually got a tree to sit under when it's hot. So don't ever underestimate the blessings Allah Ta'ala has given you. Always be thankful for whatever Allah Ta'ala has given you. And always have complete tawakkul on Allah Ta'ala. Allah Ta'ala, you just said you had tawakkul in this month. That Allah Ta'ala saw you through this month. Similarly, have tawakkul in all the other matters. In rizq halal, in giving sadaqah, in doing ibadah. Sometimes you think, if I pray, I won't have time for work, or I won't be able to do this. A lot of people, when I was at university 20 odd years ago, used to say to me that when I went for jobs, that don't have a beard. Because in that day, many people didn't have a beard. Now, mashallah, beards have become a fashion. And you see lots of Gore with beards, lots of Christians with beards. But in those days, people were telling me, don't have a beard, because you won't get a job. But Allah Ta'ala gave me a job straight away. Because if you have complete tawakkul in Allah Ta'ala, you will get that. So anything that you do in the deen, have complete faith that Allah Ta'ala will not let your deeds go astray, will not let them go away. Allah Ta'ala does not commit oppression on anybody. Allah Ta'ala favors you. You take one step towards Allah Ta'ala, Allah Ta'ala will take 10 steps towards you. You stretch your hand out, Allah Ta'ala will stretch His arm out to you. So get closer to Allah Ta'ala, have complete tawakkul on Allah Ta'ala. And we're getting to the time now we should pray. So we'll end it there. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillah. And anybody who hasn't paid Sadaqatul Fitr, pay that now before the namaz ends. And the other point is, there's no fixed rate for Sadaqatul Fitr. There's a minimum amount, which is £5. That's for ordinary people. And this is one thing we need to get into our minds about Sadaqah as well. Depending on your status, give more. If you pay your £5, you'd have done your basic. But give more if you have the wealth. Because what did the Prophet ﷺ say? The Prophet ﷺ said, the believer is the one who likes for his brother what he likes for himself. So you like for your brother what you like for yourself. So if you are wealthy, give more. Give £10, give £15 a head, give £20 a head. Depending on your own wealth, you know your situation. Because what does this money do? It means that the poor people can have a good Eid as well. So that they can not have to beg and they can enjoy the blessings of Eid. You know, think about that father or think about that mother whose children are poor, who can't give them any toys, who can't give them any food, can't give them clothes. What do you think that father or that mother is thinking about when they see their children, look at their face, their children, when they see other people with good things and they don't? So give more than you can. And give according to your own intention, and give according to your own desire. Because if a guest comes to your house and you're sitting there with a glass of Coke, proper, the red Coca-Cola, and then you give your guest at the same time something from Aldi Coke, a 20p bottle, how would that look? So similarly, if you're a rich person who's eating the luxuries and spending, £50, £60 on toys for your children, £50 on clothes for one day for your children, then you should think about how much you're giving Sadaqah Fitr to the poor people. The Sufiya, one of the ways that they preserved some of their wealth was that whenever they bought a cloth for themselves, they bought exactly the same cloth for a poor person and gave it. So they always bought two of everything and gave the same thing. And that showed the gratitude that they had to Allah Ta'ala. And showed that I'm accepting this luxury, I'm accepting this good thing because I need it. If you need, as I said, poverty isn't that you live like a tramp. Poverty is that you're happy with what you have and you only have what you need. There are some people who need a big house. There are some people who need a good suit. Everybody should have a good suit, especially people like Shah Sahib or people who represent Islam. I was speaking to an ambassador once. He said, get a suit made, tailored, so when you go to high-level meetings, people see. That's what they will see. And high-level people will see if you're wearing a cheap suit or a good suit. And that will create the first impression on people. So people who represent Islam should wear good clothes, should turn up in a good car. If you turn up in a banger, what will people think? They'll automatically, first impressions unfortunately do count, and that reduces your wealth. So if you need something good, then have it. There's nothing wrong with that. If you need a good car because you travel a lot, or there's need for it, there's nothing wrong with that. That doesn't go against spiritual poverty. It's when you have it because you don't need it. I know some brothers this year in Iftari, they did every Iftari in a restaurant, which is totally extravagance. There's maybe if you want 1 or 2 days you can do, but what's the point of that? That's utter extravagance. There's no need for that. But some people who have big bodies, some people who need to eat a lot, they have to eat a lot. There's nothing wrong with that. So always give what as I said, go back to the point, give what you can give and give what according to your own intention and according to your own haysiyat. Don't think that it's £5, I'll give £5. Look at what you're doing as well and give according to that. If you only spend £5 on your meal, then you give £5. But if you're the kind of person who goes to a restaurant and spends £25 on a meal, then why are you giving £5 in sadaqah and fitrana? You should look at what you're doing and look at yourself first and then give according to your intention. And that's one of the ways of preserving it, because you're showing gratitude. Allah Ta'ala says, if you show gratitude, I will increase whatever you show gratitude for. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillah.